The princess only believed in power. Then she met a human who bowed to no one. Asterisk Princess Kethara stood 8 feet tall, her crystalline body glowing with bright blue light. The glow meant power. The brighter a Zephyrian shone, the stronger they were, and Princess Kethara was the brightest being on the warrior moon of Zephyria. She walked through the great throne room with heavy steps. Each footstep echoed like thunder. The walls were made of black stone, carved with images of battles and victories. Weapons hung everywhere, swords longer than a human was tall, energy. Cannons that could destroy buildings, and shields that had stopped armies. Lesser Zephyrians knelt as she passed. Their bodies glowed dimly compared to hers. Some barely glowed at all. These were the servants, the workers, the defeated, and Zephyrian. Society, the weak served the strong. This was the natural order. This was the only way Kethara reached her throne. It was made from the hull of the first enemy ship she had destroyed. When she was just 16 years old, the metal was twisted and scarred from battle. She sat down and looked at her war council. General Vexmer stepped forward. His body glowed orange, bright enough to show he was powerful, but still much dimmer than the princess. He had served her for 20 years, ever since she crushed the rebellion on the northern continent. Princess, he said, bowing his head. We have reports from our scouts. Speak, Kethara commanded. Her voice was deep and strong. Like rolling thunder, Vexmer activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above them, star maps, ship designs, strange creatures with pale skin and small bodies. A new species has been discovered, Vexmer said. They call themselves humans. They come from a planet called Earth. 3 systems away from our territory. Kethara leaned forward. She studied the images with sharp eyes. The humans looked pathetic. They were small, barely 6 feet tall. Their bodies were soft and weak, with no natural armor. They had no claws, no thick skin, no visible weapons built into their bodies. How strong are they? She asked. Very weak, Princess, said Commander Thekover, another member of the council. His body glowed yellow. Our scientists studied their biology from long-range scans. They have no natural defenses. A single Zephyrian warrior could defeat dozens of them in combat. Kethara smiled. It was not a kind smile. What about their technology? Primitive, Vexmer answered. Their ships move slowly. Their weapons are weak. They use chemical rockets and metal bullets. Nothing that could threaten our forces. And their military? This is the most interesting part. Princess, Thekover said, they have no unified military. Their planet is divided into hundreds of separate groups. They fight each other constantly. They cannot even conquer their own kind, let alone others. Kethara laughed. The sound filled the throne room like the roar of an angry beast. Weak and divided. How did such pathetic creatures even survive long enough to reach space? Unknown, Princess, Vexmer admitted, but they pose no threat to us. Kethara stood up from her throne. Her glow grew brighter as her anger rose. No threat, General. You forget the most important lesson of war. Vexmer looked confused. Princess, when you find weakness, you destroy it before it can spread. Kethara walked down the steps from her throne. Weakness is a disease. If we ignore these humans, other species might think we have grown soft. They might think the mighty Zephyrians no longer care about maintaining order in the galaxy. She stopped in front of a large window. Outside, she could see the training grounds where young Zephyrian warriors practiced combat. They fought with energy weapons and powered armor. Their bodies glowed as they channeled their inner strength into devastating attacks. I have conquered 12 star systems, Kethara said. I have crushed 17 rebellions. I have made the Zephyrian Empire the strongest force in this part of the galaxy. All because I understand one simple truth. She turned back to face her council. Power respects only power. The weak exist to serve the strong. This is natural law. Commander Thekover nodded. What are your orders? Princess, we ignore them. For now, Kethara said. But if any human ship enters our territory, we destroy it. We will make an example that shows the galaxy what happens to those who do not respect Zephyrian strength. The council members bowed. Yes, Princess, Just then, Lieutenant Crixitha rushed into the throne room. Her body glowed pale green. She was young and still growing in power. She looked nervous and excited. "Princess," she called out. "Urgent report from the Border Patrol." Cathara's glow grew brighter with annoyance. "Speak quickly. A human ship has entered our territory," Crixitha said breathlessly. "It came through the Vega jump point 20 minutes ago. It's heading directly towards Zephyria." The throne room fell silent. Cathara's eyes glowed like blue fire. "One ship?" she asked. "Yes." "Princess, small vessel. Appears to be unarmed." Cathara smiled again. This time, her smile was like a blade. "Perfect. The galaxy has given us a chance to teach an important lesson." She turned to her war council. "General Vexmer, scramble 3 battle cruisers. Surround the human ship, but do not destroy it yet. I want to see these weak creatures with my own eyes before I crush them." "Princess," Vexmer said carefully, "perhaps we should simply destroy the ship from a distance. Why waste time with weak enemies?" Cathara's glow flared so bright that the other Zephyrians had to shield their eyes. "Because, General, when you make an example, you must make sure everyone can see it clearly. Bring the humans to me alive. I want them to kneel before Zephyrian power. I want them to understand their place in the natural order before they die." She walked back to her throne and sat down. "And General, make sure our communications networks broadcast everything. I want every species in the galaxy to watch what happens to those who dare enter Zephyrian space without permission." The war council bowed and hurried away to carry out their orders. Cathara remained on her throne, her body glowing with anticipation. Soon, these pathetic humans would learn the same lesson she had taught to countless others. The strong rule the weak, serve, and Princess Cathara was the strongest of all. Chat controls Sonnet 4. The human ship was small and silver, no bigger than a Zephyrian transport vessel. 3 massive battle cruisers surrounded it like hunters around trapped prey. Princess Cathara watched from her throne room as the ships approached Zephyria. The human vessel made no attempt to fight or run. It simply followed the escort ships toward the main landing platform. "Curious," Cathara said to General Vexmer. "Most species try to escape when they realize their mistake. Perhaps they are too stupid to understand danger," the general replied. His orange glow flickered with amusement, "or too weak to do anything about it," added Commander Thekover. Cathara stood up from her throne. "Bring the humans to me immediately. I want to see these creatures before the execution, an hour later." The great doors of the throne room opened. 6 Zephyrian guards marched inside. Their bodies glowed bright yellow with power and aggression. Between them walked a single human. Cathara stared at the creature with interest. The human was even smaller than the scans had shown. He stood barely 6 feet tall, with brown skin and gray hair. He wore simple clothes, a dark blue uniform with small metal symbols on the chest. No armor, no weapons, no visible signs of strength. But something was different about this human. He walked calmly between the guards, his head held high. His eyes moved around the throne room, taking in the weapons on the walls and the glowing Zephyrians. He showed no fear, no panic, just quiet curiosity. The guards stopped 10 feet from the throne. One of them, Captain Zegather, stepped forward and bowed to the princess, Princess Cathara. He said, "We present the human intruder. There was only one aboard the ship, only one." Cathara asked, surprised, "Yes, Princess, the ship is a diplomatic vessel. This human claims to be an ambassador." Cathara laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber. "An ambassador? They sent one small, weak creature to represent their entire species?" She stood up and walked down the steps from her throne. Her crystalline body blazed with blue light, casting sharp shadows across the room. The human watched her approach, but did not step back. "I am Princess Cathara, ruler of the Zephyrian Empire," she declared. "You have entered my territory without permission. In our law, this means death." The human nodded politely. "I understand, Your Highness. I am Ambassador Marcus Chen, representing the United Earth Coalition. I came here hoping to open peaceful discussions between our peoples." Cathara stopped directly in front of him. Even standing on the lower floor, she towered over the human. Her glow was so bright that it should have been painful for him to look at. But Marcus Chen met her eyes steadily. "Kneel," Cathar commanded. Marcus Chen did not move. "I said kneel," Cathar repeated, her voice growing louder. The other Zephyrians in the room began to glow brighter, responding to their princess's rising anger. "I heard you, Your Highness," Marcus said calmly. "But I cannot do that." The throne room fell completely silent. No one had ever refused a direct order from Princess Cathara. General Vexmar's hand moved toward his weapon. The guards tensed, ready to attack. Cathara's glow flared so bright that some of the dimmer Zephyrians had to look away. "Cannot, or will not," Marcus said. "Where I come from, people do not kneel to other people. We may bow our heads to show respect for ideas, for principles, for those who have passed away. But we do not kneel to show that one person is better than another. You dare to disrespect me?" Cathara's voice shook with rage. "No disrespect intended," Marcus replied. "I respect your position and your authority, but I also respect my own dignity as a thinking being and human culture. All people have equal worth, regardless of their strength or position." Cathara stared at him in her 300 years of life. No creature had ever spoken to her this way. Most aliens begged for mercy. Some tried to bargain. A few attempted to threaten her, but none had ever calmly explained why they would not. "Submit, equal worth," she said slowly. "You believe you are equal to me? In terms of our basic right to exist and think freely, yes," Marcus said. "You are clearly stronger than me. You have more power and authority. But those things do not make you more valuable as a living being." General Vexmar stepped forward. "Princess, this creature mocks our entire way of life. Let me execute it." "Now," Cathar held up her hand. "Wait," she studied the human's face. "You know I could kill you with one strike." "Yes," Marcus said. "You know your ship is surrounded and you cannot escape." "Yes, yet you still refuse to kneel." "Yes, why?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Because if I kneel now, I would be saying that your strength makes you better than me. I would be telling every weak person watching that they deserve to be treated badly. I would be betraying everything I believe about the value of life." Cathar felt something she had never experienced before. This human confused her. He was clearly intelligent enough to understand his situation. He knew he was going to die, yet he chose to face death rather than abandon his principles. "You would rather die than compromise your beliefs?" she asked. "If necessary, yes." Cathar walked in a circle around the human. Marcus turned to keep facing her, but his posture remained relaxed and respectful. "Interesting," she said finally. "Very interesting." She returned to her throne and sat down. "Ambassador Marcus Chen, I am going to make you an offer. I will not execute you today. Instead, you will serve in my palace. You will see how a proper society works, where the strong lead and the weak follow. Perhaps you will learn to understand the natural order. And if I do not change my mind?" Marcus asked. "Then you will die eventually, but you will have more time to think about your foolish ideas." Marcus nodded. "I accept your offer." "Good." Cathar turned to Captain Zegather. "Take the human to the servant quarters. Give him simple work. Let him see how the weak live in a strong society." As the guards prepared to escort Marcus away, Cathar called out one more time, "Human, what makes you think your way is better than ours?" Marcus looked back at her. "Because, Your Highness, in my experience, the strongest societies are not the ones where the powerful crush the weak. They are the ones where the strong help the weak become stronger too." The guards led him away, leaving Cathar alone with her confused thoughts and a very uncomfortable feeling that her perfectly ordered world had just become much more complicated. Chat controls Sonnet 4. Marcus Chen was given a small room in the lowest level of the palace. The walls were gray stone, cold and damp. A single glowing crystal provided dim light. The bed was hard, the blanket thin. It was clearly meant to break his spirit, but Marcus had lived in worse places. As a young teacher on Earth, he had worked in refugee camps and disaster zones. He had learned long ago that comfort came from purpose, not from soft beds. On his first morning, a Zephyrian servant came to fetch him. Her name was Velana, and her body barely glowed at all, just a faint yellow light, like a dying candle. She was tall like all Zephyrians, but thin and bent over as if carrying a heavy weight, human. She said quietly, "You must come. Captain Zekather has work for you." Marcus followed her through narrow corridors filled with other dim-glowing Zephyrians. They carried cleaning supplies, pushed carts of food, and moved quickly to avoid getting in anyone's way. Their heads were always down, their movements careful and quiet. Captain Zekather waited in the main kitchen. His body glowed bright orange, marking him as a warrior, assigned to watch over the servants. He looked at Marcus with disgust. "Human," he said. "You will work in the food preparation area. You will clean dishes and carry supplies. You will not speak to the other servants unless necessary for work. Do you understand?" "I understand," Marcus replied. The work was simple but endless. Marcus spent his days washing plates, carrying heavy pots, and cleaning floors. The kitchen served thousands of Zephyrians in the palace. The work never stopped, but Marcus noticed things. He watched how the servants worked and how they were treated. He saw the problems that no one seemed to care about fixing. The kitchen was badly organized. Supplies were stored far from where they were needed. Workers wasted time walking back and forth across the large room. The cleaning area was too small, causing delays when many dishes needed washing at once. On his third day, Marcus made a suggestion to Velana. "If we move the spice storage closer to the cooking area," he said quietly, "the cooks would not have to walk so far every time they needed something." Velana looked around nervously. "We cannot change anything. This is how it has always been done." "Who decided it should be done this way?" Marcus asked. The strong ones, the warriors and nobles. We do not question their decisions." Marcus thought about this. But do the warriors and nobles actually work in the kitchen? No. Velana admitted. They give orders, but they do not cook or clean. Then how can they know the best way to organize the work? Velana stared at him. This was clearly a thought that had never occurred to her. Over the following days, Marcus continued to make small suggestions. He showed other servants more efficient ways to carry multiple plates. He suggested grouping similar tasks together to save time. He helped settle arguments between workers by finding compromises. That made everyone happy. The changes were small, but they made the work easier. The servants finished their tasks faster and with less effort. Some of them even began to smile occasionally. Velana was the first to seek out Marcus for advice. She had a problem with another servant named Corvex, who kept taking supplies she needed for her work. "In my world," Marcus said, "we would sit down together and talk about the problem. We would try to understand why Corvex needs those supplies and find a way for both of you to get what you need." "But he is stronger than me," Velana said. "His glow is brighter. He has the right to take what he wants. Does his brightness help him clean better?" Marcus asked. Velana looked confused. "What do you mean? Is he a better cleaner because he glows brighter? Does his strength make the dishes cleaner?" "No," she said slowly. "Actually, I am much better at cleaning than he is." "Then maybe," Marcus suggested gently, "strength is not the most important thing for every job." That afternoon, Marcus arranged a meeting between Velana and Corvex. He helped them talk through their problem. It turned out Corvex was taking extra supplies because he was afraid of running out and being punished. Marcus suggested they create a simple system for sharing resources fairly. The solution worked. Both servants were happier and more productive. Word of Marcus's help began to spread among the servants. They started coming to him with their problems, disputes over work assignments, confusion about tasks, fear of punishment for small mistakes. Marcus listened to each problem carefully. He never told anyone what to do. Instead, he asked questions that helped them think about solutions. He shared stories from Earth about how humans handled similar situations. "On my world," he would say, "we believe that people work better when they feel safe and respected. We try to solve problems together instead of fighting over who is stronger." The servants began working together in new ways. They helped each other with difficult tasks. They shared knowledge and skills. The kitchen became more efficient and more peaceful, but the changes did not go unnoticed. Captain Zekather watched everything with growing anger. He reported to General Vexmer, who reported to Princess Kethara. The human is causing problems, Zekather said. The servants are acting strange. They talk more. They work differently. Some of them are questioning orders. Princess Kethara was intrigued. She decided to see for herself. She came to the kitchen unannounced, her bright blue glow immediately, drawing attention. All the servants stopped working and knelt, all except Marcus, who continued washing dishes but looked up respectfully. "Human," she said, "approach me." Marcus dried his hands and walked over, standing straight but not kneeling. "I hear you have been teaching my servants new ideas," Kethara said. "I have been sharing some human perspectives on working together," Marcus replied. "And what gives you the right to change how things are done in my palace?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Your Highness, I was assigned to work here. Part of working, for humans, means trying to do the job as well as possible. When I see ways to improve things, it feels natural to share those ideas. You think you know better than centuries of Zephyrian tradition." "Not better," Marcus said. "Different. On Earth, we have learned that many minds working together often find better solutions than one mind working alone, no matter how smart that one mind is." Kethara looked around the kitchen. The work was indeed running more smoothly than she had ever seen. The servants looked more focused and less fearful. "You believe the weak should have opinions about how things are done?" she asked. "I believe people who do the work often have the best understanding of how to improve it," Marcus said. "Strength and intelligence are not the same thing, and even intelligent people can learn from others." Princess Kethara felt that uncomfortable feeling again. This human's words challenged everything she believed about leadership and power. "We will discuss this further," she said finally. "Tonight, you will come to my private chambers. I want to understand these strange human ideas better." As she left, Marcus returned to his dishes. Around him, the servants exchanged worried glances. Private meetings with the princess rarely ended well for anyone, but Marcus showed no fear. He simply continued his work, humming quietly to himself. The ripples of change were spreading through the palace, and Princess Kethara was beginning to realize that this small human might be more dangerous to her world order than any army she had ever faced. Chat Control Sonnet 4. The alarm sirens began wailing at dawn. Their harsh sound echoed through every corridor of the palace, sending Zephyrian scrambling in panic. Marcus was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with the other servants when the emergency lights started. Flashing red, Captain Zekather burst through the doors, his orange glow flickering with worry. "All servants to emergency stations," he shouted. "This is not a drill." Velana grabbed Marcus's arm. "What is happening?" she whispered. Before Marcus could answer, the palace shook. Not from an attack or explosion, but from something much worse. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone stumble. The lights dimmed and brightened randomly. Princess Kethara's voice came through the communication system, reaching every corner of the palace. Her usual confident tone was strained with concern. "Attention all citizens of Zephyria. Our early warning systems have detected a massive solar storm approaching our system. The electromagnetic waves will reach us in 6 hours. All non-essential personnel must evacuate to the underground shelters immediately." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Solar storms were dangerous for any technological civilization, but they were especially deadly for a society that depended heavily on energy-based technology. Like the Zephyrians, the servants around him began to panic. Their dim glows flickered with fear as they realized what this meant. If Zephyria's energy grid failed, millions would die. The planet's life support systems, food production, and even the artificial atmosphere generators all depended on the central power network. "Move quickly, but stay calm," Marcus told the servants near him. "Panic helps no one." As they hurried toward the shelter areas, Marcus noticed something that made him stop. A group of Zephyrian engineers was running in the opposite direction, toward the lower levels of the palace. Their glows were bright yellow and orange, marking them as skilled technical workers rather than warriors. One of them was Kextel, a young engineer Marcus had befriended during his weeks in the palace. And like most Zephyrians, Kextel had been curious about human ideas and had often asked Marcus questions. About Earth's technology, Kextel, Marcus called out, "Where are you going?" The engineer stopped, his face grim with worry. "Marcus, you should be heading to the shelters. We have work to do." "What kind of work?" "The solar storm will overload our quantum stabilizers," Kextel explained quickly. "These are the devices that regulate power flow throughout the planet. If they fail, the entire energy grid will collapse. We have to manually reset them." "How dangerous is that?" Kextel's glow dimmed with fear. "Very dangerous. The stabilizers are located deep underground, near the planet's core. The tunnels will be filled with radiation from the storm. Even with protective suits, most of us will not survive long enough to complete the repairs." Marcus felt his human instincts kicking. Throughout history, humans had faced impossible situations by working together and refusing to give up. "Can I help you?" Kextel looked confused. "Marcus, you are not an engineer, and humans are even weaker than our people. You would die within minutes down there." "Maybe," Marcus said, "but I might be able to help in ways you haven't thought of. Humans are good at finding creative solutions when normal methods don't work." Before Kextel could object, Princess Kethara appeared. She was moving fast, her bright blue glow illuminating the entire corridor. Behind her came General Vexmer and several other high-ranking officials. "Kextel," she said, "urgently report on the repair mission." "Princess, we have 12 volunteers for the stabilizer reset mission, but our calculations show that even with our best engineers, we have only a 30% chance of success. The radiation levels are too high." Kethara's glow flared with frustration. 30%? That is not acceptable. Millions of lives depend on this mission. "Princess," Marcus stepped forward. "I volunteered to join the mission." The group fell silent. General Vexmer laughed harshly. "The weak human wants to help with technical work. This is not time for jokes." "But Princess," Kethara studied Marcus with her sharp eyes. "Explain." "Your Highness, Zephyrian technology is more advanced than ours, but the basic principles are the same: energy flow, circuit protection, system redundancy. These concepts exist in both our civilizations, sometimes an outside perspective can see solutions that experts miss." "You would die," Kethara said bluntly. "Maybe," Marcus admitted, "but I've seen what happens when good people give up because the odds are bad. Sometimes the impossible becomes possible when enough people refuse to quit." Kextel stepped forward. "Princess, Marcus has been helping us improve efficiency in many palace systems. His ideas are unusual but effective." And Marcus added, "Humans have one advantage in this situation. We are used to working in dangerous conditions with limited resources. We're good at improvising solutions when everything goes wrong." Princess Kethara was quiet for a long moment. The palace shook again as the solar storm grew stronger. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, human, you may join the mission, but you will follow orders exactly. We cannot afford mistakes." 2 hours later, Marcus found himself in a radiation suit, following 12 Zephyrian engineers through narrow tunnels. Deep beneath the palace, the tunnels were carved from solid rock, with emergency lighting casting eerie shadows on the walls. The radiation detectors on their suits clicked constantly, showing dangerously high levels. Marcus could feel the heat even through the protective gear. The Zephyrians moved slowly, their natural strength sapped by the hostile environment. They reached the first stabilizer chamber after an hour of difficult travel. The device was massive, a crystalline structure 20 feet tall, humming with contained energy. Warning lights flashed red across its surface. "The control circuits are overloaded," announced Chief Engineer Vexmer. "We need to manually replace the primary regulator crystals." The team worked quickly, following procedures that had been drilled into them for years. But as they worked, new problems appeared. Secondary systems began failing. Backup circuits overloaded. The radiation levels climbed higher. "This is not working," Dexmer said after an hour of repairs. The storm is stronger than predicted. Our standard procedures cannot handle this level of interference. Marcus had been watching and learning. Now he stepped forward. Chief Engineer, may I make a suggestion? Speak quickly. You're trying to fix each system individually, but they're all connected. Instead of replacing damaged circuits, what if we bypass the most damaged sections and create new pathways for the energy flow? Impossible, said another engineer. The system was not designed for that, but it might work, Kexel said thoughtfully. It's like creating a detour when a road is blocked. Marcus nodded. Exactly. We use parts from the less critical systems to build temporary bridges around the damaged areas. It won't be pretty, but it might keep the power flowing until the storm passes. Working together, the team began implementing Marcus's improvised solution. They cannibalized parts from secondary systems, jerry-rigged connections with spare cables, and created a patchwork network that would have horrified any engineer in normal circumstances. But it worked. The stabilizer resumed normal operation. They moved to the second stabilizer chamber, then the third, each time. Marcus's creative approach helped them find solutions that weren't in any manual. The Zephyrian engineers began asking for his input before trying standard procedures. But as they worked on the fourth and final stabilizer, disaster struck. The tunnel behind them collapsed, trapping the team underground. Worse, the improvised repairs were failing under the increasing radiation. Someone needed to stay behind and manually hold the systems together until the storm passed. I'll do it, Marcus said quietly. No, Kexel protested. You have done enough. Let one of us, Kexel. Marcus interrupted gently. You have families waiting for you. I'm just a stranger here. Besides, he smiled, humans are stubborn. We don't give up easily. As the other engineers were pulled to safety through a narrow gap in the rubble, Marcus positioned himself at the main control panel. The radiation was so intense now that his suit's alarms screamed constantly through the communication system. He could hear Princess Kethara's voice. Marcus, your radiation exposure is critical. You must evacuate now. Can't do that, Your Highness, Marcus replied, his hands moving constantly over the controls. Keeping the energy flows balanced. Someone has to keep these systems stable for another 2 hours. If I leave now, everything we've accomplished will be lost. You will die. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching the readings on his screen. Maybe, but millions of people will live. That seems like a fair trade. Why? Kethara's voice was strained with emotion Marcus had never heard from her before. Why would you sacrifice yourself for people who have treated you badly? Marcus smiled, even though she couldn't see him, because that's what people do for each other. Your Highness, when someone is in trouble, you help them, not because they're strong or weak, not because they deserve it or not. You help them because they're alive, and life is precious for the next 2 hours. Marcus manually controlled the stabilizers as the solar storm raged overhead. His hands moved constantly, adjusting power flows, rerouting energy, and holding together the improvised systems that were keeping Zephyr alive. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft humming of life support machines. Marcus Chen lay unconscious on a bed designed for much larger Zephyrian bodies. His small human form looked fragile under the glowing medical devices that monitored his vital signs. Princess Kethara stood at the foot of the bed, staring at the readouts. The human had been unconscious for 3 days. The radiation exposure should have killed him instantly, yet somehow he was still alive. Weak, but alive. Dr. Mexandra, the palace's chief medical officer, approached quietly. Her body glowed a soft green, marking her as a healer rather than a warrior. How is he? Kethara asked without looking away from Marcus. Better than expected. Princess, humans appear to be more resistant to radiation than our initial scans suggested. His body is healing, slowly but steadily. Will he recover? I believe so, but it will take time. Kethara nodded. She had visited the medical bay every day since the rescue, though she told herself it was only to check on a valuable source of information about human capabilities. The truth was more complicated. For 3 days, she had been unable to stop thinking about Marcus's final words over the communication system. You help them because they're alive, and life is precious. The idea seemed impossible. Yet she had seen the proof with her own eyes. The rescue itself had been extraordinary. When the tunnel collapsed, trapping Marcus in the stabilizer chamber, Princess Cathara had ordered an immediate evacuation of the rescue teams. The radiation levels were too dangerous. Standard Zephyrian protocol was clear. Do not risk many lives to save one. But the servants had refused to obey. Valana had been the first to speak up. The dim glowing kitchen worker had stood before Princess Cathara and said something no servant had ever dared say. No, Princess, she had said, her voice shaking but determined. Marcus saved all of our lives. We cannot abandon him now. Kextel and the other engineers had agreed. Even some of the palace guards had volunteered for the dangerous rescue mission. They had worked for 18 hours straight, digging through radioactive rubble with their bare hands, refusing to give up. When they finally reached Marcus, he was barely breathing but still conscious. His last act before collapsing had been to make sure the stabilizer controls were properly set for automated operation. Even now, lying unconscious, he had changed everything. The palace servants no longer moved with their heads down. They talked to each other openly, sharing ideas and helping solve problems. The kitchen ran more efficiently than it had in decades. Work crews from different departments had begun cooperating on projects without being ordered to do so. Most shocking of all, Princess Cathara found herself listening to their suggestions. Just yesterday, Valana had approached her with an idea for improving the food distribution system. Instead of dismissing the servant, Cathara had found herself genuinely interested in the proposal. The plan was practical and would save both time and resources. When had she started caring about the opinions of the weak? The answer was obvious, though she was reluctant to admit it. Marcus had shown her something she had never seen before, strength that came not from physical power, but from an unshakable commitment to helping others. A soft sound from the bed drew her attention. Marcus's eyes were open, looking around the room with confused but alert awareness. Your Highness, he said weakly, trying to sit up. Do not move, Cathara said quickly. You need rest. Marcus smiled slightly. Do the stabilizers hold? Is everyone safe? Yes, Cathara said. The power grid remained stable throughout the storm. You saved millions of lives. We saved millions of lives, Marcus corrected gently. I couldn't have done anything without Kextel. And the others? Cathara stared at him. Even now, weak and injured, his first thought was to share credit with others. This was completely foreign to her experience. In Zephyrian culture, individuals fought for recognition and glory. Yet this human seemed to find strength in lifting others up. She walked to the side of the bed and did something that shocked even herself. Princess Cathara, ruler of the Zephyrian Empire, knelt down beside Marcus's bedside. Marcus's eyes widened in surprise. Your Highness, you don't need to. Yes? Cathara said quietly, I do. She was quiet for a long moment, gathering her thoughts. Marcus, I have spent my entire life believing that strength meant the ability to dominate others. I thought the weak existed to serve the strong because that was natural law. Marcus listened, without interrupting. But you have shown me something different, she continued. You faced death rather than abandon your principles. You sacrificed yourself for people who had treated you badly. You found solutions that our greatest engineers could not see. You inspired others to be braver and kinder than they thought possible. She met his eyes directly. That is a kind of strength I never understood before. Marcus nodded slowly. Different cultures have different ideas about what makes someone strong. Tell me about your culture's idea of strength. Marcus thought carefully before answering. We believe that true strength comes from making others stronger. The best leaders are not the ones who defeat their enemies, but the ones who turn enemies into friends. The most powerful societies are not the ones where a few people control everything, but the ones where everyone has a chance to contribute. And you think this way is better than ours? I think, Marcus said gently, that any society becomes stronger when it values all of its people, not just the physically powerful ones. Princess Kethara was quiet for several minutes. Finally, she spoke again. Marcus, I want to offer you a position as my advisor. Help me understand how to make Zephyrian society stronger in the way you describe. I'm honored by the offer, Marcus said. But I have conditions. Kethara was surprised. No one made conditions when the princess offered them a position. But she found herself curious rather than angry. What conditions? First, we begin reforming the legal system so that all Zephyrians have basic rights, regardless of their physical strength. Second, we create opportunities for servants and workers to contribute ideas and suggestions for improving society. Third, we start educational programs that teach cooperation alongside competition. Kethara considered this. 3 months ago, these ideas would have seemed like madness. Now, after seeing their effects in her own palace, they seem like wisdom. Agreed, she said. Marcus smiled. Then I accept your offer. 1 week later, Princess Kethara stood before a gathering of 10,000 Zephyrians in the great plaza outside. The palace, citizens from across the planet, had come to hear her speak. The crowd glowed like a sea of colored lights under the evening sky. My people, she began, her voice carried by amplifiers to every corner of the plaza. Recent events have taught me an important lesson about strength. The crowd listened intently. Princess Kethara was known for her powerful speeches, but tonight felt different. For generations, we have believed that the strong should rule and the weak should serve. We have built our entire civilization on the idea that physical power determines worth. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but I have learned that there are many kinds of strength. The strength to sacrifice for others. The strength to work together toward common goals. The strength to admit when we are wrong and change for the better. She paused, looking out over her people. A human named Marcus Chen taught me that the most powerful societies are not those where the strong dominate the weak, but those where the strong help the weak become stronger too. Kethara raised her hands, and her body blazed with brilliant blue light that illuminated the entire plaza. From this day forward, Zephyria will embrace a new definition of strength. We will build a society where every citizen can contribute, where cooperation is valued alongside competition, and where our power comes from lifting each other up rather than tearing each other down. The crowd was silent for a moment, processing this revolutionary idea. Then, slowly, voices began calling out in agreement. The glow from thousands of Zephyrian bodies grew brighter as excitement and hope spread through the plaza. Standing at a window high in the palace, Marcus watched the scene below. Beside him stood Velana, Kextel, and several other servants who had become his friends. Do you think it will work? Velana asked. Can people really change so much? Marcus smiled, remembering similar moments of change he had witnessed on Earth. Change is never easy, he said. But when people choose to grow together rather than fight against each other, amazing things become possible. Below them, Princess Kethara continued her speech, outlining plans for a new Zephyria, where strength would be measured not by the ability to dominate, but by the willingness to serve. It was the beginning of a new age, built on the simple human idea that every life has value and every person deserves the chance to become their best self. And at the heart of it all was a former teacher who had never knelt to power, but had taught a princess to kneel in respect for the strength found in compassion, cooperation, and hope. Chat controls Sonnet 4.